Modern watchmaking is dominated by brands that are like the craft itself, being centuries old. In Germany specifically, their deep-rooted tradition permeates throughout the few streets of the small town of Glashütte, the region responsible for its initial ascent back in the 19th century. However, like many tales of history, there are different chapters, and since 1990, 2 months following the fall of the Berlin Wall to be exact, the next chapter for this storied region began and coincided with one of the most impressive success stories in modern watchmaking, with the creation of a brand informed by outstanding German design principles and a heart for manufacturing at their core. This is NOMOS Glashütte. So Ines, thank you very much for leading us through this tour. One thing I want to start with, when it comes to NOMOS, so many people overlook the concept of your manufacturing capabilities. We're in a place that is very special when it comes to that. Could you explain where we're at?
Yes, we're currently in Schlottwitz. This is where all the caliber parts of our in-house calibers are produced. It's very important to say for us and really to stress that we really produce every tiny part ourselves. So that is really important for us, and I'd love to show you more of it.
Love to see it, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. So the first station of the manufacture of the caliber part production is our turning shop. There are 5 CNC turning machines where you put in large brass or stainless steel or whatever material you need for the according caliber part. You put it in these machines, they will turn the rod, and there will be different tools that lathe or mill or drill out the according caliber part. For example, on this machine here, we have screws, tiny little screws that are coming out.
And every single day, something new is potentially being cycled through these machines.
Exactly. So Schlottwitz is functioning like our own in-house supplier, so the facility is all ours. But of course we have orders for them. We need screws, we need balance wheels, we need some kind of wheels, second wheels, whatsoever. And then they produce it for NOMOS exclusives.
And just to give the scale to this, we're talking about pieces that we're talking the micron of getting down into the details.
Yes, we're going into the mu. Mu is 1,000 of a millimeter. So really, really, really tiny. So you have these big machines. I always think it's very impressive, and these tiny little things run out.
And I want to stress, you're producing this here in Glashütte.
Yes, maybe it's very important to say that NOMOS is an independent watch brand, so there is no major corporation behind us flooding us with money. We have to make smart investments, and one of the smartest one was probably invest in our caliber part production, where we do everything ourselves and where we can also control the quality of the watches and of the caliber parts. The better the caliber parts are, the better and the more accurate the watch can be, which is the most important thing, because we want a well-working watch which is accurate and which is fun. So after the caliber parts, the wheels and everything is produced. Especially the wheels usually still do not have teeth on them. So my colleague Carola is now applying the teeth on the component that gives the drive on the second wheel. It's really tiny, how you will see in a second. You can hardly see them. She's using the pin set to apply it into the machine that is then milling out the teeth of the component. Here you can also see a lot of oil. You have seen it in a turning shop before. So you always need lubricant while operating with machines and caliber parts, and also to cool it down, we use oil that is also filtered in here. So it is filtered and reused then in order to avoid unnecessary waste. So this is the one that is raw still, that has no teeth, and the upper one is the one that really has teeth. So we have the wheels now, but we do not have a main plate yet. This is happening here. Here are 3 generations of lathes that produce our main plate. So they're basically magazines. You can see them there. You'll see it there later. Where these raw plates are put in. They're blanks. The blank raw plates. And the lathes put in the different levels, and they lathe out the main plate of the watch.
Which so all of these little holes are being cut.
All of these, they are drilled and lathed out. There are different These machines have, every machine different tools, but this machine has over 200 tools in it. It works 24/7. It can do all our caliber plates from alpha to 6101, everything. There are a bunch of magazines in there, and every magazine can be a different main plate. So we really can decide, okay, if we need more alphas, then we'll do more alphas. We need more 6101, then we do more 6101. This machine does it for us, which is pretty amazing. And it always does one side. You see this side is still blank, and here we have one side, and here is the other side. So it has to go in twice. Now we have produced our caliber parts. It's also very important to say that after every step of the way, there is quality control. So not every part, but after a certain amount of parts, every part is measured and checked if they really are fine, if they really have the quality that we need to have high quality watches. And this machine, it's like a rattle plate, it rattles. It makes a picture of it first. And with the camera, the caliber part of the machine knows in which position it is and which one it can grab. Then it grabs it, it puts it into the little tray, which we need for the next part that we have that is machine operated. So this, once we have the little trays set, they come over here. These are obviously different caliber parts. We are currently placing rubies on the main plate of the alpha movements. There are little holes in it that you can see, and the robot is placing in the ruby at the right hole with the right amount of pressure in the right position, right in the main plate. That's a little pre-assembly for the watchmakers, so they don't have to do it. In the numbers we produce, we have to be very efficient, so this machine guarantees efficiency and also quality, because it's always the same amount of pressure, always the same position. That's like quality control and efficiency in one step. So after all the producing and all the quality controlling, we are refining our calibers also, and that is happening actually by hand. So we can see it here, the ratchet wheels, where you can see this beautiful sunburst finishing. And she's doing that by hand. She's applying a little bit of diamond paste with a very special mixture, top secret, on the machine, and has the wheel on the other part. And then she has to put the right amount of pressure at the right time. Really has to have serious skills. It looks like she can do it with closed eyes, but there is serious skills behind it.
How many people at the company can do this work? Because this is a defining characteristic of NOMOS. You turn your movement around, you see that ratcheting crown wheel with the spiral finish. How many people can actually do this?
2.
Just 2?
Just 2.
So every single person has a NOMOS on their wrist, all going through the same hands.
Was either her or my colleague back there. So we have produced all the caliber parts. We just need to assemble the watch, and this is what happens here in the chronometry in NOMOS Glashütte. And at this particular station, that's the pre-assembly of the watch. So there are different components of the watch that can be pre-assembled, like for example the barrel with the feather inside. That's happening here. So she places the barrel in the tool, and then she puts in the feather. The feather comes like this, and she really has to put it correctly in, because the end of the feather has to go into the right position within the barrel, because they will be connected. And then she cuts it off with the tool, checks it. So that's the barrel core that she's applying now into the core.
Where the mainspring will surround.
Exactly, where the mainspring will surround. This is an
lubrication,
oil.
small little lubrication at the center,
oil,
so that the mainspring will eventually be able to coil.
She's closing the case.
Closing the barrel.
Closing the barrel, just with the right amount of pressure again, and then we have a barrel.
In addition to seeing the barrel, there's other steps such as this, where we're seeing some riveting of components.
It's important also to say that not every day every caliber part is produced. It's always on demand. And we just assembled the barrel completely, and you can see here how one wheel is riveted.
So one thing I think is important to also establish is your swing system. So you've been doing this for now close to a decade, and this is your proprietary escapement.
Yes.
For context for those, this is a common aspect of a watch that is really that heartbeat of transfer of energy.
Yes.
It's allowing a watch to run,
Yes.
and most brands are going to outsource this.
Yes.
You have been producing this in-house and these components themselves.
The swing system is very important to us. Some people ask us, why did you want to do a proprietary escapement when you could buy it from a supplier? Well, there are two problems with it. First, it was a monopoly, and monopoly are always a little problematic. And second, we want to be completely independent. So independence comes also with independence for caliber parts and crucial parts of the caliber.
DUW, can you give us a sense of what that actually refers to?
DUW means Deutsche Uhrenwerke, which is translated into German watch calibers. So that says it basically. That's how we name our calibers, and then there's the number behind it. So this is shellac. Shellac is actually the excrements of lice, which is very interesting to do so. And you can see how she's heating the shellac up here. So this comes in a cube, and you have to heaten it up to then later pull off a fine.
It's like a thread.
Like a thread, like a fine thread.
And this is used as a adhesive type of material, or like a wax. It's used as a wax where it will solidify the pallets in the anchor itself.
Here we added the shellac already to the pallets, and we heated it up so it can run into where it is supposed to be. And then he has to visually check it and has to make sure that the shellac is in the right position, because sometimes there's a little bit of excess, and then you have to clean it away.
Yeah, I think the important point here is that these small little pallets, which are the highest points of friction for a movement, are being held together by essentially glue.
By essentially glue made of lice excrements. So what she's basically doing, she's putting the thing in the machine, and there is coming a light airstream out to rotate it. And then it can calculate this way where it needs to be balanced because of the different material components. It might look visually okay, but the weight is not okay. And she's classifying them. So she is checking what they're doing, how they are rotating, and she's putting them in the different categories. So now we have 4 to 15, and she's classifying them.
What does each one of those numbers indicate?
The bigger the number, the heavier is the balance wheel.
Got it. So it's weight.
It's weight, yes, exactly, because it obviously depends how much you lathed out. So this is the balance wheel in the tool, and she's assembling the hairspring.
You have to be very, very careful, because the most delicate part of a watch is the hairspring.
So now the balance wheel is assembled and connected with the hairspring, and now you have to make sure that it runs evenly. That's a quality control, and usually they run pretty good, but you can still see on the monitor that it's not as even as it should be. In the caliber you don't have a lot of space and height. So she visually checks it in different positions, and then with her little tools she's able to correct it if necessary. And this is a very challenging task, because if you look at her, she hardly moves, and on the monitor there is a lot going on. And it took about a year to train a trained watchmaker to correct and even out the hairspring. So now we pre-assembled certain components of the watch, and we assembled the swing system and corrected the hairspring. Now we're at the assembly lines. So this is where the main plates and the different components and wheels that are still spare are really get assembled. So really here the caliber comes to life. So what you're seeing here, she's grabbing the main plate and she is putting in different components of the watch. So this is like real caliber assembly. So she's basically doing this, and they come back here. And the robot is actually at first measuring the heights. You can see it over there at the monitor. So this is alpha. There are 5 different levels that need to be measured. And it's turned also. The measurement is also some kind of quality check, because if the measurements aren't right, it goes back to the watchmaker to readjust. And now you can see how the oil is floating in. There are 2 different oils with different viscosities being applied by the machine, because the machine is quicker, and we can maintain the control that there's always the right amount of oil at the right place. So this is some kind of quality control again. It starts with a person, continues with the robot, and it ends with a person. So you can see here very well, he's putting in more wheels.
Laying components in areas that were just lubricated.
Exactly. And so everything is getting assembled. Now this caliber will have its first tick. So everything has been pre-assembled. She's putting in the escapement. So this will be the first time that all of these caliber parts have come together and have been built together and assembled, and where you can really see where it comes to life. Now we're already almost at the end of the tour, and the watch had its first tick, but of course the caliber needs to be cased in. So this is all happening here, and now you can see what watch it actually is. This is a Tetra model, and she's putting on the hands on the dial at first. And then there is a visual quality control again. She has to see that the hands are in the right position. This is happening very fast, and it looks like it's easy, but if you look at the steady hand she has, it's really not. It requires a lot of skills. So now we already applied the hands to the dial and the caliber, and this is where he comes in.
Where we'll get fully cased up.
Where they get fully cased up. So you can see there is also a visual control and a little cleaning.
Because at this point, if there's any dust in the case, there's no way getting it out.
Exactly. So it's like a hoover, and with pressure air. Also the dial needs to get cleaned up again.
You'll pat it down with this slight little putty that will track any of the small little fuzz, debris, anything of the sort. And this is really the final line of defense as a watchmaker. It goes through all these different steps, the producing of the components from these raw materials, the cutting to have the pre-assembly, then final assembly, and then we're encasing up. So all these hands have been passed through. So you have to make sure that everything's perfect at this point.
Exactly.
You're making sure that this is done so that every person that was a part of the process before was able to make sure their work was well done.
Yes, exactly.
In addition to upholding their German manufacturing ethos with their work in Glashütte, NOMOS is also a brand that is a leader for their recognizable and thoughtful design. As a way to successfully bring together the bifurcated elements of traditional watchmaking with forward concepts, the brand has additional operations above the lively and socially diverse streets of Germany's capital, Berlin.
Thomas, thank you for walking us through some of the design process. Now to begin, we're in Berlin. It's NOMOS Glashütte.
Yes.
So what is the thought process and methodology behind splitting the quaint town of Glashütte with a very vibrant city like Berlin? Why does NOMOS do this?
Was set up here in Berlin, but it proved to be just right to do the creative work here in this big city, vibrant city, not only capital of Germany, but of course it's like the cultural center in Germany, and where everything happens, and you have lots of young people coming here, lots of exhibitions and clubs and stuff. And the opposite you have in Glashütte. There you have the knowledge and the know-how of watchmaking for many generations now, and of course it's a quiet little place, and when we go there it's just like, it feels like holidays. You step out of the car and it's just quiet and countryside, and this is what you need for building watches.
When I think of NOMOS, I think when many people think of NOMOS, one aspect that is like the first entry point for many people is design. And when you're talking about where does this brand get inspiration, we hear things like Bauhaus, we hear about the Deutsche Werkbund. Like, where does NOMOS get the inspiration for design? Like, where is the key characteristics where things start? And then I'd love to be able to go through, what is your process as you start to look at a design?
Well, yeah, that's true. In the first place, we are associated with German design, very straight and very rational in a way. And of course, we are associated, especially in foreign countries, we're associated with German design and Bauhaus. For us, NOMOS is also, it is not that straight in terms of rationality. We also, for us, it's always important, and I think it's one of our key elements in our DNA that we love colors. We love playing around with different kind of ideas and inspirations to make sure we are not taking ourselves
too seriously.
Too serious.
Of course.
In the end, it's about watches, and it's there to show the time in the first place. But actually, it's much more important to enjoy your watch every day. There's a decent amount of color and fun and irony in there, so that's very important to us as well.
Where does the design inspiration start with? And maybe we can start to go through, like, what goes through your mind as a designer and the designers here at NOMOS when you're beginning? Do you start with outward inspiration from a source maybe even outside of watches? Do you start with the dial? Do you start with the color? Where does that begin for you?
For us, it starts inside out. So the most important core element to us is Glashütte, and it's our in-house built movements and the craftsmanship that we show in the watch. That shows all the elements of Glashütte watchmaking. We want to look modern and clean, and so I think for us, watches are, in the first place, we consider watches to be an instrument, a well-made product.
One other area for NOMOS is, like, there's this expressive nature to your cases. They have this silhouette that's quite recognizable, and they're all very distinct. Like, you're looking at something that has more of this curved style lugs. You have a crown guard position. Then you have like the Orion that has these more elongated, thin, tapered lugs.
Yeah.
How do you think about, as part of the design, where does the case fit in terms of how it should look and tell the story?
It was the initial idea to have recognizable watch archetypes. So it was the Tangente with the flat round case and the flat sapphire crystal. And then was the Orion, which is more like a little pebble and round and soft. And then there's the Tetra, which is similar to the Tangente but square. So it was very basic formal ideas that we started with. And it still is the idea of every detail has its function. This typical term, form follows function, which is sometimes too simplistic for us, but still it's where it's coming from. So,
how the design process, how long does it take typically? So you have ideation to completed manufactured product. What does that typically look like?
Well, it's very different from project to project, but till we get the first prototype in our hands, it's easy 1 year that's passed, and then we work on from there. So 2 years is not too much time, actually.
You hear the word minimalist a lot when you hear NOMOS. Do you find that as a derogatory term? And how would you respond to people that just classify these watches as minimalist?
I think we are not minimalist at all. Like, if you think of the art movement, minimalism, it's all about, leaving things out and reduce it to the core idea. And this is not what we do. In the end, we transport our craftsmanship. This is something that we put a lot of effort in to show that it's a watch made in Glashütte with lots of effort and craftsmanship and know-how.
So from the quaint and quiet town of Glashütte all the way to the vibrant city that is Berlin, this was our window into NOMOS Glashütte. It's a brand that is hard to put in one box, but it's one that I think is important to understand if you're trying to appreciate German watchmaking. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you all next time.